Wizards of the Coast has just released the full contents of the Innistrad Midnight Hunt Commander deck. So today, we're going to be taking a look at 10 of the craziest cards that just got revealed.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered to talk about some brand new magical goodness. I have taken a look over all of the cards that have been spoiled from the upcoming Innistrad Midnight Hunt Commander decks, and I've picked out 10 of my absolute favorites that were just spoiled. Now, interestingly enough, this list is going to completely exclude red cards because there are no red cards in these commander decks. And white is only actually going to have one card on this list. All the other colors are going to get 3 different offerings. But as tends to be the case nowadays with Magic, white seems to be kind of underwhelming. And I think that's because part of white's identity is very much rule setting, and it's hard to find that balance where you're creating cards that set rules but at the same time aren't too powerful. And so we've been getting kind of underpowered meh style white cards, but this right here is definitely not in that category. Curse of Conformity. 1 white and 4 for a aura curse. Obviously it's an enchant player. Non-legendary creatures enchanted player controls have base power and toughness 3/3 and lose all creature types. The flavor text says whether you'll fit in isn't up to you at all. And the artwork is very grim, man. Look at this. You've got this village populated by people, but they're all faithless. Well, maybe, you know what? Considering what's gone on with them, they probably don't have much faith. What gods are you going to cry out to in this case? Who can you cry out to when you have no mouth? So the idea behind this, everybody's been made into the bland sameness, but there's also this kind of like dark aspect to it, right? The village is all shadowy. It's got this awful kind of feel to it. And also, these just look like regular humans, basically, or humanoids, right? But they're 3/3 with this enchantment. So what gives them that power? Is it this rage of uniformity? I don't know. I really like this as a concept. It's very bleak, and I also like the fact that this card is playable in both an offensive and defensive sense. You can slap this on one of your opponents, and then none of their creatures will be bigger than 3/3, obviously with the exception of legendary creatures. So from the get-go, you can go, yo, I know you like to play gigantic creatures or make gigantic tokens, but bad news, buddy, you can't have them be bigger than 3/3. But then on the flip side of the coin, I play a red, white, green Hazes on Tamar deck, which makes a ton of little 1/1 Sand Warrior Donk creatures. And this enchantment reads as if it was perfectly made for my deck, because not only will it make my creatures 3/3s instead of 1/1s, they lose all creature types. And how Hazazon works is he makes a number of Sand Warriors equal to the number of lands you have out, but when Hazazon gets destroyed, he gets rid of all the sand creatures that you've created as well. With this, they would lose their creature types. So it literally obliterates Hazazon's downside. Instead of making a number of 1/1s equal to the lands you have out, I would make a number of 3/3s equal to the lands I have out. Oh, and by the way, they're not going to get destroyed, which feels great. And there's another aspect to this, the fact that it doesn't remove creature abilities. So if you have little 1/1 creatures that have epic abilities, now all of a sudden you have a 3/3. Or, you know, some creatures they make start out as 1/1, but they do things based on, like, if this creature deals damage, draw as many cards as the damage it's dealt, but they make it a 1/1, so it's really just draw 1 card. Well, not with Curse of Conformity out. This card is great. It's got my thumbs up. Actually, obviously, every card we're going to talk about today has my thumbs up. Let's move on to the next one. Next, we've got the Cleaver Scab, which at first I read as Clever Scab, and then I was like, wait, what? Cleaver Scab is 1 blue and 3 for a 2/4 zombie horror. 3 and tap it, sacrifice another zombie, create 2 tokens that are copies of the sacrificed creature. So he just cuts it down the middle and goes, now we've got 2 of them, which really wouldn't work that well with a living creature. But when you're dealing with zombies, hey, whatever, man, they're already dead, so who even cares, right? I love the concept of this card overall. The flavor text, the artwork, the flavor text says, furious and unable to separate, the bitter rivals consoled themselves by splitting everything else they saw in half. Where it's like, we're unable to separate. Are you really? First of all, it looks like you've got a nice divisory line down the middle. And also, secondly, it looks like Beefy Boy there would not have much of a hard time separating himself from Skinny McWingus on the other side. You know what I mean? The one side's like, I don't miss arm and leg day, but I did miss wearing my pants day. That loincloth is getting down into Danger Town. You know what I'm saying? That's not... You look at it on the one side, the guy's got full-on shorts. On the other side, that fabric is straining, which might lead to some of the rage as well. I like the fact that this is a symmetrical concept where it's like, boom, split this guy right down the middle, and the artwork has that kind of asymmetrical symmetry, right? Where you've got like the different symbols of Avacyn, the little tombstones on either side, and like they're framed in front of the moon. Like it's got that split kind of vibe to it. This is a really cool concept for a card overall. The idea of a zombie that's like, it hates itself. It's horrific. It's a zombie horror. It wants to split itself, but because it can't, it's like, I will Mad Max everybody else. Wah, wah, wah. Awesome. Moving on. We've got Curse of Unbinding. What a wild card this is. 1 blue and 6. This is another curse. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. Put that card onto the battlefield under your control. That player puts the rest of the revealed cards into their graveyard. Now, first things first, I feel like this is artwork that was originally designed for either some kind of card discard or some kind of mill effect, right? This doesn't really feel to me like this was originally intended for the artwork to be you pulling a creature out of someone's mind and summoning into existence, because there's literally nothing to give that away from the artwork, right? The artwork is definitely somebody whose mind is coming unraveled, and they're screaming as like everything that's flying out there. Like, look at the pages. Each page, if you look really closely, actually has a drawing of a cross section of a brain on it. So this is literally somebody's brain being unraveled. So unfortunately, the flavor of the card in terms of pulling a creature out of somebody's mind isn't really transmitted here. This really has more of a feeling of madness, right? But whatever, it does mill. Let's be fair, because the cards do end up in the graveyard. Everything that you hit before a creature does go into the graveyard. I guess my main thing is just that it doesn't really have the creature connection in here. But either way, this is a super potent bonkers card that I'm going to put in my cube. The casting cost is obviously huge and insane, but getting a free creature off of their deck every turn is absolutely amazing. I love this card. I think it's great. When I read it, I went, whoa, man, this is good. Then we've got Shadowkin. What a cool concept. 1 blue and 3 for a 2/2 flash shapeshifter. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player mills 3 cards. You may exile a creature card from among the cards milled this way. If you do, Shadowkin becomes a copy of that card, except it has this ability. So it is a weird sort of clone-style creature that only clones through milling. So it like basically feeds through the mind and just goes, boop, I'm going to go ahead and grab this creature. Unfortunately, this one also suffers from the whole disconnect between the concept and the artwork, because to me, for this to work, because it's milling cards, the cards end up in the graveyard, right? And you're exiling one of these creatures to become a copy of it, but it's not something that's already in play. If you see this artwork, it feels like a shapeshifter that becomes something else that's already alive, right? It's coming out and copying this woman who's picking at these reeds. So to me, for the artwork to tie better into the concept overall of the card, it would really show her standing over like a grave, and the creature in the grave being exiled is like kind of disappearing and being drawn up into the Shadowkin. That being said, I really, really like the artwork on this card a lot, and I love the concept of this card. So for me, it's still a huge win. Obviously, I know, flavor's a big deal for me, so I have these kind of quibbles when I look at cards, and my favorite is when a card ties together absolutely perfectly. But, I mean, this flavor is awesome. Literally the shadowy kin version of this woman that she apparently doesn't know is there, although I don't know how hey, I feel something, I feel a hand on my back, turn around, that's me. Oh lordy, I guess she's not just picking up grass, there's probably some mushrooms down in that water too, son, if you know what I'm saying. Now let us move on to the next card. That is Gorex the Tomb Shell. He's got like a mausoleum on his back. It's a giant zombie turtle with a built-in mausoleum in the back for your coolest zombies to hang out in. So it's 2 black and 6, although there's an easy way to reduce that cost. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may exile any number of creature cards from your graveyard, and you're definitely going to want to. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each card exiled this way. So you can exile 3 creatures, and he's only going to cost 2 black. But you can actually exile any number. If you had 20 cards that you wanted to exile that were creatures in your graveyard, you could do that. It won't take them below the 2 black because it only reduces the generic part of the casting cost. But regardless, you can empty a whole bunch of undead into the mausoleum on his back. So he's a 4/4 Death Toucher, which, I mean, looking at the scale of the artwork, he feels bigger than 4/4, doesn't he? But I guess maybe the fact that turtles are already, like, slow and ponderous, and a zombie turtle would be even slower, accounts for the smaller power and toughness. Now, whenever he attacks or dies, choose a card at random exiled with Gorex, and put that card into its owner's hand. So every time you swing with him, he's going boom. Every time you have him slowly lumber out, one of the zombies is like, slow down, you maniac, I can't take this pace. Get it? Because zombies are so slow. And then he falls out the window and tumbles off the side of the turtle. And you're like, I'll scoop you up, bloop, 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 put some magic in you. Get out there. Go for a walk with your turtle buddy. I don't know, man. I really love the concept of this. This giant, hulking, mossy zombie turtle with a gigantic mausoleum strapped on his back is just an awesome concept to me. This is really cool. Let us move on to the next card. That is Prowling Geistcatcher. This is like everything in this video has a crazy concept, but this one to me is like 1 black and 3 for a 2/4 human rogue. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile it. If that creature was a token, put a +1/+1 counter on Prowling Geistcatcher. When Prowling Geistcatcher leaves the battlefield, return each card exiled with it to the battlefield under your control. Now this card is crazy for a couple reasons. First of all, it feels very much like a white creature. I mean, black certainly has a lot of resurrection effects, but it's done for more of a reanimation dark aspect, whereas this guy is literally capturing people's souls, and then when the lantern gets broken, they're given a new life. Like, they don't come back as zombies, they don't come back as undead, they come back as the original version of what they were, which, I mean, I guess if their zombies are undead, then yeah, they come back that way. But, you know what I mean? Like, it's the real version. Like, if you got pulled into this, you'd come back as your real soul, which is amazing. And every creature being exiled is being sucked into this lamp like a Ghostbusters, like proton capture trap, whatever it's called. I guess they have the proton packs and they have the ghost trap, which does whatever. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. It's like one of those ghost traps where you can bring everybody back to life. And the artwork doesn't have any kind of menace to it either. You know what I mean? You could easily change this border to white, change the black mana symbol to a white symbol, and it would totally still fit 100%. Maybe change the creature type from human rogue to human cleric. But either way, it totally works. It's a really cool concept as like really powerful, capturing everybody's spirits, but at the same time, doesn't feel like a black card. Moving on. What do we got next? Ravenous Rotbelly. Now this definitely feels like a black card. 1 black and 4 for a 4/5. When it enters the battlefield, you can sacrifice up to 3 zombies. When you sacrifice 1 or more zombies this way, each opponent sacrifices that many creatures. So you can use this to literally force each of your opponents to sack 3 creatures by just throwing 3 cheap little jank bag zombies into the meat grinder, which feels like an amazing deal. The flavor text says, the patrol found the graft empty, save for a few well-chewed bones. And you can see the artwork. Look at this thing. It's a big, like a hulking zombie with a chest mouth. Look at the giant tongue that's coming out of it. And he's got this big old rusty axe. And what I really like is you can sacrifice 3 zombies to it, right? And if you take a look in the background of the artwork, you can see 3 skulls on posts, which could represent the 3 forced sacrifice of your opponent's creatures or the 3 zombies, whatever you want. But I love the fact that you've got these 3 items representing it in the artwork. The artwork is so dark. The rot belly itself looks so intense with the crazy flock of ravens in the background. Like, it's got a really dark vibe, and I really dig it very, very much. This is a cool card that seems pretty potent. Moving on. Curse of Clinging Webs. Here's another weird one that doesn't feel like it fits into the color that it's in. We're going to have a couple green cards like that. So, Curse of Clinging Webs. 1 green and 2 for a curse that says whenever a non-token creature enchanted player control dies, exile it, and you create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach. This is a very interesting card to me from a mechanical perspective, because this genuinely feels like a black card, right? The idea of a creature dying and you getting a creature off of it totally feels very black aligned. Now, I understand in this case it can be like nature feeding, like these spiders are feeding on these bodies and that's how they propagate. Like, I get you can make it work, but ultimately when you first read this card and you think about creatures hitting the graveyard, going away, and spiders showing up, it has a very black feel to it. The flavor text says, Claire realized too late why no one ever took the shortcut through the abandoned mill. Poor Claire, you're about to be eaten by a bunch of spiders. I like the fact that she's like stuck up in the webbing to the point where even her cloak is hanging upwards like it's being blown by the wind. And look at the size of the spiders. They're like the size of her head. What an intense way to go. And her lantern has gone out. She even has her dagger out, but she can't move it enough to like cut herself free. And one of her boots is falling off. This is a very despondent kind of art where you're just like, wow, things are going to go really bad for you. I think it's a very cool card. Moving on. We've got, this is the other one that I feel like doesn't particularly feel like a green creature. 2 green and X for a legendary tree folk. His Curibus Harvest Celebrant. I don't even know if I said his name. When he enters the battlefield, he has a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it. Now, this is going to trip you up a little because he's 2 green and X. So your brain's going to think, well, if I pay 6 mana, 2 green and X, he's coming to play with 4 +1/+1 counters. But no, he actually gets 6 +1/+1 counters, which I like. That's cool, but it feels a little bit weird, right? Remove a +1/+1 counter from him. Prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn to another target creature with a +1/+1 counter. That feels like a decidedly white ability. Being able to prevent all damage that was dealt to one of your creatures specifically without using some kind of fog effect definitely has more of a white feeling aspect to it. Although I do like the idea of this like Harvest Celebrant legendary tree folk. You can see all the lanterns that are hanging off him, and he's got a head that almost looks like a gourd with like multiple eyes, like you could almost see all around him. But the idea of like Innistrad has fallen into this time of darkness, and the harvest celebrations are the only thing that are going to save Innistrad. And so, I mean, a protector legendary tree folk kind of spirit concept does fit flavor-wise. It just feels a little bit disjointed from a color pie perspective. Not enough to be a genuine problem, but definitely enough for me to remark upon it. Next up, we have Ruinous Intrusion. I love this card so much. 1 green and 3 for an instant. Exile target artifact or enchantment. Put X +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the mana value of the permanent exiled this way. My God. First of all, love that it's instant speed. Second of all, love that it exiles the artifact or enchantment, right? So you've got a scenario where even if they have an indestructible artifact or enchantment, nah, son, gone. And then you get to pick one of your creatures and beef them up. And they made sure to word it in a way where it's on target creature you control, which means if you have no creatures out, you can still play this to get rid of a problematic artifact or enchantment, but you don't have to worry about growing your opponent's creatures. So I love it for that reason. And the flavor concept of it is hilarious to me. The gourd carving was supposed to take place after the feast, and you can see this werewolf has just run in, and he's just destroying all your pumpkins. What are you goobers doing? It ain't Halloween. Get these pumpkins out of here. You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys have like Halloween and Devil's Night where you're from, right? Depending, I mean, obviously, if you're an American, you'd be familiar with the stuff. But I know people watch from all over the place. So if you have Halloween and Devil's Night, you're just like, oh, look at he's going wild for it. If you don't, then maybe this doesn't mean as much to you. But I just love it. He's just going crazy, whipping the pumpkins around. Like, how much fun is that? I dig it. What can I say? I dig it, my friends. So that wraps it up. That's all the cards I had to talk about, which is good because, good Lord, I've already been yammering for 20 minutes. If you liked the video, then like the video. If you love what I'm doing here, jump on my Patreon. Thanks for coming by, my friends. Big shout out to all my patrons, and I will see you all for the next video.